production. That's one aspect that you can use of science. But if all of science is incorporated and assumed as a means of production, you're not really accessing the full potential of science. And we all know the power that science has. We all know the power that science has. So the third point, 1, 2, 3. The third point is that it results in the ineffective use of scientific powers. So I'll just put weakened, S-C-I-E-N-T-I. Right? Scientific powers are weakened. Why are they weakened? Because there isn't a sense in which the scientific community is unilaterally, and that might be a little bit too far, but primarily focusing our interests, placing their interests on social value. That the scientific community is being co-opted slowly by Wall Street, and I'll give you examples of this in a second. The scientific community, the genius within the community, and I mean that literally, the genius within the community is being co-opted by Wall Street and then becomes an arm of Wall Street, becomes an extension of Wall Street. Rather than using technological innovation and scientific knowledge, Horkheimer says, to the benefit of increasing social value, scientific community is allowing itself to be co-opted by Wall Street. To sort of be matter of fact, right? Rather than applying scientific development to the real needs of mankind, it is contributing to the general economic crisis, right? And as Horkheimer says, right, and the real needs of mankind. The real needs of mankind is the increase in social value. And as he began at the beginning, he says on page 1, bullet point number 2, the first beginning of the quote says, in the general economic crisis. This is why I think it's absolutely specific, case specific to the occupation movement, because Horkheimer ingeniously, I think absolutely ingeniously recognizes that all of the blame is not to be placed on the economists, not to be placed on those who go about making and investing capital. It's not just about those who have versus those who have not. Part of the grievance has to be at the means of creating this massive amount of wealth, and Horkheimer says that part of the blame, part of the responsibility for the economic crisis has to be placed on members, not individual people, but on the scientific community as such. I think that holds true in the present grievances that members of the occupation movement have against Wall Street, and my claim is don't misdirect that frustration solely to Wall Street. Members of the scientific community as such needs to be held accountable based on Horkheimer's assessment. Okay, so movement-specific suggestion. So, in a sort of general sense, why not just make a documentary film? It'd be great for up-and-coming, young, aspiring filmmakers to make a film about this grievance, right? Take this conceptual idea that I've just given you on the role of the scientific community and the current economic crisis, the global recession, really, especially within the United States. Contemporary science, this is middle of page 2, contemporary scientists should first acknowledge the pressure to commodify their intellect, right? So scientists should, you know, if they believe this, should say, no, there is pressure for me to take my ideas and make products out of my ideas. Rather than taking my ideas to help people and better society, there is pressure, academic pressure, legislative pressure, pressure insofar as I'm trying to attain grants and grant money. A lot of it is directed and forcing me, albeit tacitly, not an explicit force, forcing me to commodify my intellect, right? To commodify my ideas. My ideas have to be transformed into things that can be sold for profit, as we saw in the beginning, right? This pressure is a result of the economic demands to co-opt science as a means of production. And that's what we said earlier, right? This is what Horkheimer is saying. Notice scientists can voice their opinions of what they perceive, if they perceive, to be the real needs of mankind. It's important to hear, it's important to hear from members of the scientific community themselves, right? Horkheimer is saying that science is failing to satisfy the needs of mankind? First of all, do you believe that? Yes or no? What do you, engage the, prominent scientists, what do you see as the needs of mankind? And ask individual scientists what they see as the needs of mankind. What do you see? What do you see? What do you see? Let them say what they see as the needs of mankind, so that we, general members of the population, can see what the scientific community interprets as being the most important needs of mankind. It is, and those are the needs that the scientific method and the scientific community should be satisfying. Not the drive to maximize profit, not being co-opted by Wall Street, but by helping those individuals that need those needs to be met. Okay. And explain how contemporary science can be used as a means of addressing these needs. So what we need to do is we need to have a transformation, right? Instead of looking at science solely as a means of production, right? Science becomes a means of production. A means of production becomes a way to create products. Products becomes a means of making profits. 3 dots in a triangle means therefore. Therefore, science becomes a means of making profits, right? Instead of this framework, science is a means of production. A means of production creates products. Products are made to create profits. Therefore, science is basically reserved to, relegated to, denigrated to a means of making money. Why not remember the core? Horkheimer says, right? Horkheimer saying, why not remember that science needs to contribute to social value? I think if occupationists recognize this, we can have a much, much more effective occupation movement based on Horkheimer's critique of the scientific community. And it's not that he's raging against the scientific community, but if blame is to be placed, it cannot exclusively, in a contemporary sense, be placed on Wall Street. That's my contribution. Okay, number 3. Number 3. Bottom of page 2. Here's a quote from Horkheimer, very important, right? One way of hiding the real cause of the present crisis, and the crisis that he's referring to is the economic crisis, which I think, again, pertains specifically to our current economic crisis. Quote, one way of hiding the real cause of the present crisis is to discredit critical reason. What you want to do is discredit critical reasoning. Obviously, I've done a series on critical thinking and critical reasoning, but you want to discredit critical reasoning because you don't want the population to have the means, the intellectual ability to see through the propaganda and the facade. If the general population has the intellectual capacity to see through the facade, they can challenge the power of those who have power, right? So what Horkheimer is saying is one way of hiding the real cause of the present crisis is to discredit critical reasoning for precisely those reasons as a decisive factor except for its professional application in industry. Only time critical reasoning is appropriate is when that thought is being commodified, when that thought is being put into the means of production analysis in order to make money. 3, reason is a useful instrument only for the purposes of everyday life. My whole point on this YouTube channel is hundreds of hours worth of free lectures, but I'm not telling you how to make things. It's not a DIY channel. It's not a channel where you can take my concepts directly and make stuff to make money. Therefore, I recognize that my function on YouTube, I'll never have the kind of viewership, the kind of audience that someone else would have, even if they were intellectual, because I don't give you knowledge to make stuff. I give you knowledge for the sake of having knowledge, for critical thought, for making you a better observer, perceiver in the world. That has no value.